Erwin Smith is the embodiment of a Tony Robbins speech, dripping with charisma, wisdom, and eyebrows that give the one girl watching this channel wobbly knees, and the guys on this channel some wild insecurities about their masculinity. Nope, just me? Well, alright, moving on. His character is defined by an undeniable presence, dauntless strength, and fearlessness in the face of naked cannibals while functioning as the straight-faced executioner for hundreds of teenagers.
But Andrews, how does that make Erwin a great character? I don't have anything in common with him and
Shh, my insecure Padawan. Because I'm here to tell you. You're absolutely right, and that's okay. As storytellers, we're going to have characters that are cooler, smarter, and taller than us, but that doesn't mean that we can't love them, and it definitely doesn't mean we can't relate to them. That's why today we're looking at writing Erwin Smith, both in creating a relatable larger-than-life character, producing internal character conflict which contributes to our story's theme, and finally in having our characters serve the major role of a character foil for our protagonist. But before we can go to the incarnate Red Bull of hype, we need to start with the foundational character Erwin represents, the warrior. Is Andrews about to give us a metaphysical lecture about masculinity? What do I look like, your stepdad? No, but we are going to take a look at one of my least favorite aspects of writing. Archetypes. Hey, stay with me. This'll be quick, I don't like it any more than you do. But, archetypal characters are an unavoidable reality of storytelling. Sometimes you're going to have a mentor figure, and therefore an apprentice. If you're making something akin to a Western, then you'll probably have an innocent character, which is synonymous with the child archetype. If your story falls into the crazy situation for a normal guy, then you're going to have an everyman character. It doesn't make you unoriginal to have these character archetypes.
I am inevitable.
What it does mean once you've realized which archetype your character falls into is that it's time to make sure that this character doesn't suck by avoiding the typical pitfalls of that particular archetype. For Erwin, we have Hitler's dream child with an English last name, suggesting that Erwin's father was actually a Douglas fir and not this dork. He has a voice like thunder dipped in testosterone, leading humanity's last hope into the unknown. And while that description on paper is manly enough to fill in the patches on your crustache, this souped-up ribeye of a character isn't a lot of fun when put to paper because an archetype on its own has no conflict, and therefore no story. The same way there is no atmosphere at a Waffle House without a belligerent drunk yelling at the waitstaff, there is no fun to a character without conflict. When we write a warrior-type character like Erwin, Aragorn, or Ragnar, we run the risk of making them too awesome. They become an unstoppable force, which is great. Every story needs one to go up against. But your hero can't be fighting on the same side as this unstoppable force, this obvious winner. Instead, what we as storytellers need to do, whether our warrior is leading the charge or following orders, is show our audience that they are in fact fallible and have weaknesses. Think of this like dating. You meet a stranger and they seem perfect. Everything from their smile to their laugh and the fact that they don't spit on you when you introduce yourself is magical. So what do we do to keep them around? That's right, we point out their imperfections so that they think they're lucky to have us around. As storytellers, we do the same thing for our characters, taking a perfect archetype of a leader, a warrior, a motivational speaker, and a man who can get things off the overstock shelf at Walmart, and then sneak in some subtle imperfections to his character, allowing him to blossom into a relatable figure. For Erwin, this imperfection is due to the nature of his job. He is leading the charge in a fruitless war against an unbeatable enemy. It's in his LinkedIn bio that he decides who lives and who dies, rationalizing the sacrifices for the good of humanity. He's essentially a slaughterbot with an impeccable jawline. But this feature alone does not make Erwin imperfect. In fact, imperfection is only part of our goal when writing an awesome character. The man has just been placed in an unideal circumstance. However, what defines a character is not the predicament they find themselves in, but their response to the predicament that tells us who they are. For us as storytellers, once the unideal circumstance has been created, we then need to develop the character's emotional response to it. This produces the character conflict, which, in Erwin's case, refers to living with survivor's guilt, having watched nearly everyone he's ever known die because of the fight for humanity. But this is where Erwin's character gives its audience their first kick in the biscuits. Certainly, as storytellers, we can take a heroic character and give them remorse for their greatest achievements and their most monumental shortcomings, realizing that what they gave didn't make up for what they had lost. That's perfect. You can make that story, dip it in peanut butter, and I'll eat that up with a bib. However, Attack on Titan layers this character and jelly sandwich with conflicting wants, needs, ethics, and even a character foil. Let me show you what I mean first before we get into how it's done. Erwin wants to know the truth about life outside the walls. He needs to be humanity's greatest leader by exploring beyond the walls, and, as a consequence, sending his friends to the world's toothiest meat grinder. In one respect, this want and need do not conflict with one another. Erwin could heartlessly explore the outside world in search of answers with no regard for the lives he's ruined. But, since Erwin does have a heart, he is personally conflicted. Yes, he wants to know the truth about Paradis. Yes, he needs to lead the charge beyond the walls and get a lot of people smooshed. No, he is not happy about all of the lives lost in order to discover the truth about the island. What adds to the complexity of Erwin's internal dilemma is that this is the same search for the truth which resulted in his father's death. See how these things compound? This tension is well illustrated in the show as Erwin stands on a pile of bodies while only a few hundred yards away from discovering the truth about Paradis, and it is only in this moment where the commander's want and need are in direct conflict with one another. To know the truth about humanity would likely lead to the death of everyone on Paradis. To protect Paradis, he will never have the opportunity to know the truth. That's some rock-hard storytelling right there. Now let's put a pin in this briefly so we can take a look at what really gets my jollies hard about Erwin's character by putting him alongside our main hero, Eren, and showing how the writer uses Erwin as a character foil. Despite me hating how phonetically close these names are, Commander Erwin is in a similar dilemma as Eren Yeager when he plans the rumbling. Erwin functions as a warm-up for Eren's character dilemma, showing us one man's internal conflict to forgo everything he has ever wanted in pursuit of his responsibility to mankind and his friends. A realization that he must suffer by first surviving, knowing that people will die because of his actions, and then sacrificing himself to save the people he loves. Writing like this is smarter than a love child between Elon Musk and Albert Einstein raised on walnuts and physics books. The story actually warms us up to the idea of necessary evil through the character of Erwin Smith, so that we're mentally lubricated to understand Eren and the rumbling. Going back to Erwin's guilt, the story's depiction of him as the devil of Paradis is critical for our understanding as audience members when it comes to Eren Yeager's character. Because of Erwin, because we could understand the evil he committed in sending soldiers to fight and die, despite being a genuinely good dude, we can better comprehend the insanity of Eren's action when bulldozing his grandparents' home. Son of a bitch, that is good writing. So how do we do this? How do we make a foil character this beautifully derived for our story? Well, surprisingly, I'm going to whip out some Greek philosophy and say that first, know thyself. But since there is no self in storytelling after developing borderline personality disorder, this translates to know thy main character. When I write, a big thing I focus on is a character's want and need, because then I can focus on how the plot pulls the character in two conflicting directions. For Eren, his want is freedom. His need is the burden of saving his friends and flattening the world, and the conflict revolves around how far he needs to go in his pursuit of both. Once we know this about Eren, we can make a smaller character with a parallel want and need. Erwin's search for the truth about the world beyond Paradis is similar to Eren's truth about the need to fight or die. Both men are willing to go to insane lengths for their truths. The only difference is that Commander Erwin is the devil within the walls of Paradis, whereas Eren is the devil beyond the walls. Now that we have this basic approach laid out, the last thing left is making sure our audience loves this microcosm of our main character. Brief aside though, this is specifically for Erwin, because maybe you want to write a foil character that can make your audience hate your main character more easily. Leave a comment if you would like me to do a video on that, and I'll try to find a good example because it does sound fun. Anyway, getting back to Erwin. At this stage in the character brainstorming process, we know his archetype, we know his wants and needs, we know his function as a foil, and so we are left with the smallest details, which are conversely the most important feature of a character, which is their personality. Unlike dating, a character's personality is critical for determining whether or not the audience resonates with them, makes an emotional investment in them, and keeps watching your show or reading your book because they care about this character. Erwin could have been a heartless animal, sending his comrades to their deaths like pawns on a chessboard to obtain the knowledge he so desperately wanted. He would be defined as manipulative and cowardly, and yes, while that would have made him an interesting character, while we may have looked forward to watching him get snapped in half like a Twix bar, we wouldn't have loved him. Or maybe you would. Abuse is my love language, after all. But a key item to remember while writing your characters is the emotion that you want your audience to feel, and what actions your character needs to take to evoke that emotion. Erwin is fervent when asking his soldiers to die for a cause we know that he believes is worthwhile. He is genuine, he is stoic, rarely showing vulnerability, and even when he is vulnerable, he is not weak. This is a leader. This is the guy you hope will be your chemistry partner in lab. This is the guy you want as your wingman on Tinder. This is the man that you call when you get dumped by your AI sex robot Katya, because you know he's got a fire speech lined up for just this kind of thing. And this quality of character is accomplished more often than not simply because Erwin is always there alongside his troops, undaunted by the thought of writing left-handed for the remainder of his life, undeterred by the looming futility of facing insurmountable odds, and courageous when facing the inevitability of death by monkey baseball. As storytellers, this is what is meant by show don't tell, and it's critical in making a story, or in this case, a character, believable. We don't remember Erwin was brave because we were told. We know that Erwin was brave because we saw it, time and time again, both in moments where we knew that he was terrified, and in moments where he was so badass that he was diagnostically insane. We remember his character because he showed us what greatness in a warrior can be. He warms us up to the idea that great men can't always make great decisions, but they can make the necessary choices no one else wants to make. To write a character this memorable, it requires knowing the type of fundamental character you want to write, defining the role you want them to fill, and showing your audience so that there is no doubt in their mind that your character believes in their role, whether it's a fight for humanity, a sacrifice for friends, or one more chance with Katya. The end.